in the studios. We have a special guest here with us. Now, I can't do the 8-minute introduction, but we've got Republican candidate for Eddy County Sheriff, Scott London. Good morning.
Morning, Steve. How you doing this morning?
I'm doing fantastic. How about yourself?
Outstanding. Couldn't be better.
Now, of course, I joke about this 8-minute introduction. You was at the Republican debates last night here in Carlsbad and got quite an introduction about that last night.
Yeah, it was much more than I could have ever expected. No, I was quite flattered by the intro that Frank Niemeyer gave me last night.
Well, and of course, tell us a little bit about how things went at the debate yesterday.
You know, it was civil. Everybody,
was it?
Yeah, it was. No, we have some pretty important races.
You're disappointed because you didn't get to do any debating.
I did not, and I'm looking forward to the day I actually get to do a debate. But right now, this was just for the primaries, and in the primary, I am unopposed. But
right.
So I didn't get any debate. I just got a little bit of airtime, got to get up there and talk to the folks just a little bit and introduce myself, and then turn it over to those that are competing in the elections, in a week and a half.
Yes.
So,
and I mean, from your perspective, how do you think things went last night?
You know, it was very informative. It was a good place to be. If you didn't get a chance to go, I think they're going to be broadcasting it on, and so I'd try to catch up with that somewhere because it was really informative. I think it might help people make some decisions on how they're going to vote. And for the first time that I can remember, we actually have some important races that are going to be decided in the Republican primary, which is not typical for Eddy County.
Very true. Now, as we mentioned, you're the Republican candidate for Eddy County, and now, did I hear right? I mean, this is like never happened. We've had a Republican candidate for sheriff.
I've talked to the gals down at the county clerk's office, and they tell me that we have never in the history of Eddy County have we ever had a Republican sheriff, and as far as we can tell, have never even had a Republican candidate for sheriff.
Wow.
So
now I didn't realize that.
Yeah.
I'm
so
born and raised here.
We're setting history right now.
Yes, setting a precedence.
There you go.
Very good. All right. So, well, Scott, let's start off with talking about your background.
Well, I'm a native boy. I was born and raised here in Carlsbad, and actually, my granddad he moved out to Eddy County in 1921. And since 1921, only once has he spent more than 30 consecutive days outside of Eddy County. He moved out there on the corner of London Road and Niemeyer out in Loving, and grew up here. And like I said, I was born and raised here. My mom actually went into labor at a Wednesday night church service here in Carlsbad.
Wow.
So, I graduated high school here. After high school, I went on to join the Air Force and moved away, and then came back to Carlsbad, and then went to work for the Corrections Department and work in various prisons across the state, and then moved back to Carlsbad, and that was when I actually started working for the police department here. Worked here for a little bit, went up to Portales, worked for the University Police Department, came back to Carlsbad, worked for the police department here, and now I'm actually working for the Artesia Police Department. So kind of bounced around a little bit, but it all seems to keep coming back to Eddy County.
Absolutely. Now, well, let's talk a little bit about your experience. Of course, you're working in Artesia right now for the Artesia Police Department.
I am.
And what do you do over there?
Well, right now I'm assigned to the Professional Standards Unit, which is just kind of a fancy way of saying internal affairs. I conduct internal affairs investigations, make sure that our officers are on the up and up, and I'm happy to say that that's not enough work to keep me employed full-time, so I do other jobs like backgrounds and training and other assignments as they come along. So
very good. Well, let's talk about your campaign. What's your platform?
Well, I think what really got me motivated and what kind of the catalyst that got me interested in the race was the use of technology. You know, I've met our current sheriff several times. Really nice guy. I like Ernie, but I think we could be doing a little bit more. And for me, the information sharing seems to be one of the big things. I know records management system is one of those topics that's pretty boring and doesn't really interest people. But you know, when it comes to investigations, information is absolutely critical. And if we would simply use the technology that we've already purchased, we could be sharing information instantly with other law enforcement agencies, and then we could even participate in some larger initiatives. The Navy's NCIS, they had started this program called Links, and you have to be on an automated records management system to participate, but then you can actually share information regionally and even nationally if you would simply participate.
Well, for those that don't know, I mean, how is things handled, currently?
Right now, they're using basically the AS400, which is a DOS-based system, and I mean it was
Yeah.
it was cutting edge 20 years ago. It really was
back in the 80s.
Absolutely, but you know, technology is one of those things that we can't avoid. I see you've got an iPhone sitting on your desk there. I've got an iPad in my hand. You know, technology is all around us. We've got to get current, and if we're not getting current, we're getting behind.
Right.
So that was what kind of got me started. And then there's a few other things. I talked to some of our officers this week that in Artesia, they went out and were doing sex offender registry checks.
Okay.
And as you know, the sex offenders are required to register in all counties that they live in, work in, and go to school in, and they have to register with the county sheriff. And what I would like to see is a little bit more consistency in the way that we do our intake, in other words, the way we register them, and then do some follow-up, make sure that they're actually living, working, and going to school where they say they are.
Very good. Now, too, I know that you're wanting to get more community policing involved, and how does this work? You know,
community policing is one of those concepts that if you listen to some of the cops now, you know, you hear about traditional law enforcement and community policing. And it's kind of ironic they call it that way because community policing is actually a much older concept than what we now call traditional policing. Basically, community policing is partnering with your community to make the community a better place. You know, going out and forming relationships with other law enforcement agencies as well as private industry and businesses and individuals out there, because let's face it, we in law enforcement, we can't do it all. We've got to have eyes and ears out in the community, and if we don't have those relationships, then they're less apt to actually cooperate and communicate with us. So we've got to form those relationships so that we can work together to solve problems, not just crime, but solve problems in general, to make the community a better and safer place for the residents as well as the visitors that come through.
Now, I know you want to bring like these multi-agencies together. I mean, is that not going on currently?
You know, I think on the streets, our patrol guys, they're usually pretty good about communicating with each other, but we're just not seeing an awful lot of cooperation on a grander scale. And I think that's something that I bring to the table pretty good is right now with me working for the Artesia Police Department, I've got good relationships with the Artesia Police Department. Don Rayleigh's a friend of mine, and so you know we've got good relationships there. And here in Carlsbad, Danny Fierro, he was actually my training officer when I first made detective. He's now the chief here in Carlsbad. So you know I've got relationships with the two major law enforcement agencies, municipal law enforcement agencies here, and so we need to partner with those and not forget that Hope has a police department, Loving has a police department, and we need to bring everybody to the table to work together.
Let's talk about what are some of the problems you see here in Eddy County.
You know, I have people come and talk to me a lot about various issues. I think some of the ones that we hear about are and I think it's a training issue more than anything else. You know, sometimes we hear about deputies coming out, and I certainly don't want to badmouth them, but sometimes they're not taking reports when they need to. And I had a guy. He approached me about some stolen tools out in the oil field, and right now I think we're kind of getting taken to the cleaners in the oil field. And if you don't have a serial number, it does make it a little difficult to track that and to certainly do recovery. But if we're going to do any type of crime analysis, we need to be sure and gather that information and report it so that we can track it. Crime analysis is a great tool, and I'm throwing that out like everybody knows what I'm talking about. What crime analysis is, I guess I should explain, is taking all the existing data and with that making reasonable predictions of when our next crime is going to occur.
Oh, okay.
And if we're not collecting all the information, even if we don't have something that we can, say, do a prosecution with, you know, we don't have the serial numbers, we still need to be collecting and reporting that information so that we can make our predictions of when the next crimes are going to occur. So then we know when and where to focus our deputies to try and prevent or maybe catch them. We've actually had some success with that up in Artesia. We had one of our guys who went to some training, and when he got back, his first run out of the box, we were going through a string of auto burglaries.
Right. And
he took all the information and crunched it into a matrix and did a lot of stuff I haven't had the training, it's over my head. But he did it, and then he made a prediction of when we were going to get hit again with auto burglaries. And I always get the numbers confused. He was either 2 hours and 3 blocks off or 3 hours and 2 blocks off.
Wow.
But that was a pretty amazing prediction. Yeah. And with that prediction, we had officers in the area, and we caught the guy doing the auto burglaries.
That's awesome. Very
so,
cool.
You know, we just need to be able to look at the information that we're pulling in and analyze it and use it.
Right. And I mean, that kind of goes with right now the click it or ticket program that's going on. You know, they've made these predictions of when, you know, auto accidents happen the most and when people are not wearing their seatbelts.
Sure.
And so that's the time, you know, they're going to target, you know, that program.
Looking at statistics, and I mean, I can remember when I first came into law enforcement, we had some kind of old school technology that we were using to do our own form of crime analysis, and that was a pin map. When I first became a cop, we had a big map of Carlsbad in the briefing room, and whenever you had a burglary, you'd stick a pin on there. And, you know, you just watch that map and you see all the pins pop up, and all of a sudden you can say, we're getting hit in this area of town. Maybe we should focus our efforts there. And you know, kind of an old school form of using the technology, but we were looking at the information that we were pulling in so that we would know when and where to focus our efforts.
Very good. Now, of course, you mentioned about technology for record management and, you know, the use of the iPads, but also, too, a great technology these days is GPS.
You know, I think GPS is a wonderful tool. If we would utilize GPS in our patrol units, there's a whole host of things that it could do for us. And I think, first and foremost, it's an officer safety issue. I spoke with a guy with Concho Oil, and he was telling me that they had a field service operator that had a heart attack on location. They couldn't find the guy.
Wow.
And, you know, if you've got somebody in distress and you can't find them, that makes the distress much, much worse. So if we have an officer, say, that gets involved in a situation, they're out in the middle of nowhere, and we can't find them, well, that's a pretty serious issue. Well, if they have GPS in their units, then we know where to send backup.
Right.
And so I think, first and foremost, it's an officer safety issue. And then beyond that, speaking with some of the dispatchers, you know, they talk about some of the efficiencies that we could use. If they had GPS in their vehicles, say we have a hot call out in Otis, and the guy who's up next for a call is, say, up by Sitting Bull Falls. But yet we have another deputy who's out in White City. Who we're going to send? Well, if we look at the GPS map and see who's closest, and we have a hot call, we'll find out which deputy is closest, and that's who we'll dispatch.
Right.
And then there's the last side of it, and I think this is one area that could be real beneficial is I think if they would have the GPS and we have a complaint, it could actually save the officer. You know, if it could protect them if they're doing what they're supposed to be doing. We get a complaint saying, hey, they're going through here and they're being unsafe. Well, we can pull up the data from the GPS and we can say, well, no, they were doing what they should have been doing. Or if they weren't, well, then we can address that and say, hey, you know, deputies, we need to be sure and be careful on how we're driving.
Very true. Now, you've got a website. You're on Facebook as well. Give us that information.
Yeah, I've actually designed my own website, and that website is www.london4sheriff2012.com. And then you can also find me on Facebook and just do a search for Scott London, Eddy County Sheriff, and you'll find me there on Facebook. And I try to keep them current on events that are going on and what's happening with the campaign, and put out other information as it comes up as well. So I've got my platforms on there. I've got my bio. If you want to know a little bit more about my history, I've got that posted on there. And
you got a lot of videos too that I've noticed.
I do,
and those are real helpful.
Damian Capello over at Red Rocket Video, he's helped me with putting together some of those videos, and as time goes on, I've got some more videos that I'm going to be posting on there. So keep checking back. If you've seen my website before but you haven't looked at it recently, come back, look at my website and see if there's anything new, because I am constantly making updates, adding videos, adding information to it. So yeah, please come check out, see what I have to say, listen to me, and hear how I talk about the topics.
Very good. Tell us a little bit about the campaigning. What are some of the things that you're out doing?
Well, right now I'm kind of stepping back a little bit, letting those that are in the contested primaries do most of the campaigning. But I just ordered another batch of signs. I've been real pleased. When I first ordered signs, I ordered a couple hundred signs. My wife said, well, why'd you order so many? We're not going to get that many out. When here it is, I haven't even got to the primary and I'm out of signs, and I had to order more. So, and my big signs are finally in, and I've put up my first big sign this week. I've got a few more that I'm going to be posting up. So
now, if somebody wants to get a sign put in their yard, give you a holler?
One of the easiest ways is get on Facebook and send me a message. Okay. They've got that message there on Facebook. And just shoot me a message. Let me know when and where, or excuse me, let me know where you want the sign, and I've got people that are helping me, and I'll get the message out, and we'll get a sign headed your way.
Very good. Now I know you've been attending all sorts of different meetings and doing different talks along the way here.
The Republican Women's Club of Carlsbad has been extremely generous to me. I've gone and I've spoke to them. I gave a speech on community policing actually to them, and that speech, you can still see it on my website. I've got it posted there. The local Republicans are terribly excited because, as we mentioned, this is the first time.
I watched one of those videos. I like how you were, you throw out the questions and you're always asking, your participants, the different things.
Sure. Well, and as a leader in the community, we need to know what is important to our constituents, what's important to the community. We are a public servant, and so we need to know what the priorities are. I've actually got a survey on my website. I'd encourage anybody to go on that survey and let me know what's important to you, so that I can know what direction to take the Sheriff's Department, what areas we need to focus on, and where we may use a little improvement. So, I'm having a lot of fun on the campaign trail. I've sometimes surprised at how many people have heard of me, and I guess that's probably a good thing. Name recognition is kind of important in politics.
Yes.
But the more I talk to people, the more confident I feel. I feel I've got some good arguments to vote for me, and I think if you just get a chance to sit down and visit with me, that I can convince you that voting for Scott London for sheriff is the way to go this year.
Now, as we get closer to the election in November, are you going to be able to have a debate with Ernie?
If somebody else set it up, I promise I'll be there.
Yeah.
I'm not sure who typically does organization for debates. Like I said, obviously the Republican Party had that one last night, but that was just for the Republicans. So if we have a bipartisan debate, I will happily participate.
Be there.
Absolutely.
All right. Anything else you want to add, Scott?
I just want to remind folks again, visit my website at www.londonforsheriff2012.com or find me on Facebook. Give me a like. I like seeing those likes. We all like seeing those likes, and I'm no different than anyone else on Facebook. Before my campaign, I didn't follow Facebook now, but now I seem to be a little bit addicted to it, and I'm going back to, I have any more likes? So find me on Facebook. Give me that like. We all know what that little thumbs up means, right? So,
that's
right. I'll take all the likes I can get, and every once in a while I'll put something on there. By all means, anything you see on my Facebook, hit share. I don't mind you sharing the information that I post on there.
Yeah, very good. Well, Scott, thanks for stopping by today.
Thank you, Steve.